you just can't do the things that you did before just stop working. And I think that's what, I experienced. I think what it sounds like what you experienced and what we see guys experience too. It's like, okay, I'm going to go in with this attitude on this date. Well, wait, before it would get me X result, and now she just like wants to leave. Like, I don't get what's happening. So what we find particularly is a lot of guys struggle with long-term relationships and maintaining deeper connection when they're too plugged into the RP space. And I was the same as you, man. Like, I would binge that content all day long. That's how I met you. And
It
it
felt
gave me a
so
lot of,
good too when you first found out, huh?
dude, like,
Yeah.
yes, dude, I was right all along. And then you're watching certain shows where there's maybe a panel of guests and it's
The View
possibly in
for
Miami.
Men
The
is
view
what I've
from
heard it called. And
Yep.
I used to go on those shows. Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about this last night at dinner. We if you come down to Mexico City, there's a group of us. We have a pretty large group, and we do group dinners, we do hangouts, and we think it's really important to connect with like-minded men. This will really help your development. So we were out at dinner, and we were all talking about that show, and we were just laughing. We were just like, man, they're just so angry. They're just so angry at women and resentful and bitter. And we get where they're coming from, and we get the guys that need to go into that space. We both did. At some point, it just stops working. And it's like, hey, if I'm going to have happy relationships, not with just with women, but with men, I need to figure out how to like reconnect with, God, you going to say the word, the beta in me, right? I need to reconnect with that part of me that I said, no, you're weak. You hurt, you've hurt me. You suck up to women and all that stuff. That part of us was never a bad part. It just had a incorrect strategy. So yeah, it's such an interesting transition, and we've lived together for a couple of years, so I've witnessed your transformation through it as well as mine at the same time, because we used to watch the same creators, we used to talk about kind of the same dialogue, and we don't really talk about that anymore because it's like it's
You
not
evolve.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, we evolved, we graduate, and we want to make this podcast because we think there's a lot of guys that are stuck in there and they don't realize they're stuck in there, and they wonder why they're on a date and they're trying to be tough and they're trying to set the frame and they're trying to do all these things, and the woman's just kind of like, "What's wrong with you, man?" And so they've almost become like
Yeah.
PCs.
Yep, and I can tell you what's wrong with them. So what happens is, and again, it's a good philosophy, especially I've heard some heartbreaking stories. We've worked with some guys in some really bad situations, but we get them turned around pretty quick too. Once you do got to get them the right information, but then you got to take it a step further and actually give them a strategy. What happens to these spaces, as I alluded to in the previous comment, was that guys come into it and then they just stay there, and then it's just fixed. That's their fixed operating state of mind or frame of reference going into interactions with members of the opposite sex, or even just anyone for that matter. And what
Mhm.
happens is, and I've been there too, thank God I got out of it pretty quick, but you go through the anger phase. So all of these past traumas you've had in relationships, so all of a sudden it's not your fault. You don't have to take accountability. You put that on everyone of the opposite gender. And here's what
Mhm.
happens. This took me a little while to figure out, but women can feel your emotions. So if you go into an interaction, platonic, romantic, whatever it is, and you have underlying negative emotions, then she will pick up on that. And it really doesn't matter what you say, doesn't really matter what you
Mhm.
believe, doesn't matter how cool you are or how well you dress or what signature fragrance you have on. None of that matters. She can feel there's something off kilter with your emotional state. She will put up the guard. And then usually those dates peter out pretty fast. They don't even usually make it to the end. Or out of kindness, she'll let it go to the end. And then you do that awkward Hail Mary that, oh, got to go for the kiss now because she's about ready to get in the Uber, or you're not approaching it strategically. You're just off and you're still in a negative emotional state, which means that you are setting yourself up to fail because you cannot make the correct decisions. Now, the next
Yeah.
stage is that you just come into it neutral. Yeah, you have a strategic framework, you have a process, you know exactly how the process works. That's where Joel and I come in and help you. And then you just navigate the day like, hey, it'd be great if it went well. I hope it goes well. I hope I like her. I'm out. There's other things I could be doing. And you just
Yep.
come into it like, she seems like a cool girl. Let's see if we click. Let's see if we vibe. Let's see if there's a spark or if there's chemistry. And I still approach my dates that way now. Like, hey, it's like a phone screen for a job interview. It's like, hey, I'm just trying to fill her out. Like, is there a fit here? Is this something I want to consider moving into the future. And you notice that I'm using I things. A lot of guys come into these types of spaces or when they're brand new and they think, okay, does she want a guy like me? Or how do I make her see me as alpha rather than beta? Or how do I get pre-selection? Or how do I, don't do this, guys, but AMOG, alpha male, the group over there, these types of guys. I haven't used some of these terms in a while, but you come in focused on the wrong things. Whereas when you come in with just a mental blank slate, obviously you're taking care of yourself. You're making yourself number one. You're leveling up. This is all good stuff from the RP type space. Be the best version of yourself. Yes, I advocate that. But as you continually iterate yourself, version 2.0, version 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, ad infinitum, then you show up on these dates and you don't have an agenda. You don't have an outcome. You have a goal set. You know what you're looking for, but it's really just seeing, okay, is she going to fall into this mold? And if not, then it's fine. There isn't conflict. There isn't back and forth negativity. And what happens is, you get an abundance of options. And Joel, I've recently went through this phase. I had too many options to the point where it became distracting it's like I had a magic wand. Oh, I want that girl and I can have her. Oh, I want those girls, maybe even at the same time. You can make it happen. And then you're like, okay, now I've got it. And you'll see that it comes full circle. So a big evolution or realization for me in the process also was, I mentioned girls can feel your emotions. But also once you can feel her emotions, then it's really just that underlying emotional energy. And again, it doesn't really matter what the first date looks like. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what you do. And then I realized the cherry on top of the sundae, icing on the cake was, and I was terrified to do this because RP taught me that, okay, well, you got to be alpha, always alpha all the time, or like be the cool guy of the group. But what happens is, like, I was never really a cool guy. I was always kind of a dork. So girls can tell immediately that it's a facade, that you're not being congruent. And when there's not continuity between what your core emotional state is or who you are at the end of the day, and then the actions you're putting out there, she knows it's an act. She will reject you. And then that will just reinforce the cycle. So you want to break the cycle and eventually get to the point, for me personally, and Joel, I think for you too, it eventually comes full circle. So when I was a kid, I remember my mom would say, oh, just be yourself and girls will like you. No, it was terrible advice because I didn't think highly of myself and I treated myself like crap. And I didn't have understanding of male-female dynamics in a romantic context. And I didn't have a strategy. And I didn't realize there's sequences and structures and subsequences and there's nuance. But once you get it all down, it comes full circle. It's like, oh, the more I'm myself, the more girls like me, and not any girl, but the exact girl that I'm looking for. The girl I've always wanted. Back when I was 15 and couldn't get a prom date and laying in my room just thinking, oh, what a loser I am. Still the same person. Now I'm out there, but just like 19 versions better. I've been revved up a few times. And then you realize the more I'm myself, the more I get exactly what I've always wanted. And that's the place that we want our guys to be. We want you to put dating, the remote control in your hand. Whatever you want, you can get whenever you want it. And to do that, finding this RP stuff is a good first step for a lot of guys. But you want to take that second step, then that third step, then that fourth step. Then eventually you just get it and you never really have to talk about this stuff again unless you're Joel and I, because we are nerds on these topics.
Yeah, damn
What
right.
say you?